Hey everybody, I'm Austin Cole.
And I'm Mike Flannery.
Welcome to another episode of Real Talks, where Mike and I discuss real estate, asset accumulation, and lending. We got a good episode for you today. We're going to talk about the reality of the 2021 market, the mindset to have, and how to win. And then we're going to have a little Saturday sampler from the Explorium Brew Pub.
It's an awesome place. Yeah, we got a lot on the plate. We just wanted to give just kind of a brief synopsis of what we're seeing with current buyers and just the lack of a better term, struggle or uphill battle that you have as a buyer right now, and just how we write offers and how Austin uses a little bit of a strategy in those offers to make it a little bit more enticing for the seller. So we got a bunch of stuff we want to talk about. We also want to talk a little bit about just inventory in Wisconsin specifically versus what we've seen in the past. So a lot of good stuff. But I think the biggest thing is just looking at inventory continuing to be a problem and that kind of being a new norm in our world. And so I want Austin to kind of talk a little bit about that being on the real estate side of things.
Yeah, so guys, we don't want to beat a dead horse when we talk about this inventory issue. We've been talking about it for years, right? There's a shortage of inventory and high buyer demand. So what Mike and I were talking about this morning, it's really easy, especially when you work in this industry, and we're kind of, if you look at years past, things just were easier. And we were sitting upstairs earlier thinking about what to talk about on this live stream today, and we kind of looked at each other, and Mike, you're really the one that called out. You said, it's time for us to shift the mentality of thinking, all right, we're in, maybe a tough market right now, but we can ride it out or wait it out, or when are things going to change? We're talking about that a lot, and I think it's time to sort of shift the mentality to just, I guess, understanding the reality of what we know, the market that we're actually in, and just working with the facts, right? Because we can sit here all day long and try to make predictions. In the last episode, we were talking about, when will things change, right? When, we looked at 2008. Hey, is there a bubble? Is there going to be a crash? Are there going to be corrections? These are all just guesses. They're all just speculation. At the end of the day, what's much more important when we're in a situation is just to understand the facts of what we're dealing with right now and how to win now. Because we've been talking about this too. We're not necessarily foreseeing any major change in the future, and I think it's really good, a really good idea for everybody to sort of shift their mentality and just understand, hey, this is the way the market is now. Let's all kind of think about ways to win now and just sort of accept it as the new norm, just like what you said.
Yeah, and just on the buying side of it, we've seen the challenges. We have plenty of buyers that have written many offers and competitive offers. And there's just so many for sellers to choose from that it becomes where a cash offer or obviously highest purchase price usually takes the deal. And so for everybody that isn't, the way it goes. And just like you said, if a property's got, 12 offers on the table, one person gets a call that says, hey, congratulations, we accepted the offer, and 10 of them don't. And so we want to just talk about a little bit of Wisconsin's inventory, what we see from a numbers perspective, and then we'll get down into the nitty gritty of how to make your offer, as attractive as possible, and just shifting the mindset of what the market is now, and from our standpoint, seeing that end is not really something that we have on the radar anytime soon, at least. So
let's just talk about some stats here, guys. So some leadership in my company, Realty Executives Integrity, put out an email this week that detailed sort of what was talked about in a recent WRA article. And for those that don't know what the WRA is, it's the Wisconsin Realtors Association. So that's sort of our resource for a lot of information going in here. So here's some interesting stats for everybody. So the last time we had a balanced market was in the summer of 2017. And when we talk about a balanced market, what that means is that the inventory is sort of coming on at the same rate that buyers are buying these properties. And then there is sort of like, I guess you could call it inventory that's sort of backlogged. And when we talk about that, what we're really saying is that there was 6 months of inventory when we were in the summer of 2017. Meaning, if all listings ceased to continue to come on the market, you just dealt with what you had, right? At the rate things were selling, it would take 6 months for everything to sell, in theory, right? And so when we look at what we're at currently, this just came out, and it's kind of a staggering number. It's actually the lowest it's ever been since these stats have been recorded in Wisconsin. This is the lowest amount of backlog of inventory that we've ever had since Wisconsin started recording the real estate inventory statistics. We're currently at 2.1 months of inventory. And so, I think it's really easy to have the mentality of, all right, so, we've got an inventory problem, and, let's just wait for it to get back to 6 months. That's when things will be normal again. we're not foreseeing that that's going to be the case. So really, we have to sort of adapt and adjust our strategy in order to win in this market. This is going to be a reality moving forward, and it's not something that I think people should be like disappointed about or angry about. In some ways, it's really, really exciting, and just adjusting that mentality. I mean, we could be talking about this years from now, and inventory could be at 1 month, for example, and you'd be, wow, I really wish we were back in 2021 again when there was still houses, as an example, just hypothetically speaking. So.
And that's the main source of the problem, right? And unless a bunch of people stop wanting to buy homes, or a ton of people at once want to sell their home, that isn't just going to change, overnight. And obviously, it's taken a few years to get to the point that it is now. Right.
Things change over time, and it's so funny because I deal with older clients a lot of the time. That they'll tell me when I go into their house to list it, I'll tell them what the house is currently worth, which it might be something like $175,000, $180,000, and they'll say, "Well, geez, back in the '50s, I paid $35,000 or $40,000 for this property."
Yep.
And it's like, if people were sort of still stuck in that mentality of, "Hey, geez, that property's $40,000 or something like that," I mean, you would never be able to buy and sell real estate and find success because you're sort of stuck in the past, I guess you could say. So it's just, this is where we're at now. And here's another interesting stat for everybody here. So one of the things that's contributing to a little bit of this shortage of inventory is also that it's not very appealing to build in many ways right now because the choices aren't as plentiful as they were in the past. So
right.
Prior to 2008, this is another stat that was in the email from leadership in my company. Prior to 2008, buildable lot supply on average was about 15,000 lots. So meaning if you were going to build a house and you were looking to buy some vacant land in Wisconsin, you had about 15,000 choices across the state. But since 2008, we've averaged 3,500 lots for sale in the state. So it's a really good example. Let's say you were somebody that wanted to build a property. Let's say it was maybe 2009, 2010. And you said, well, geez, we're down to 3,500 lots. We used to have 15,000. Let's just wait, for things to kind of open back up again. That way we'll have choices again. You would still be waiting 10 years later. You would still be waiting.
It would have gone the wrong direction.
So a lot of people back then, if they were looking to build, they just sort of accepted the reality that, hey, there's not going to be maybe as many choices of what we were used to, prior to that crash and
right.
whatnot. And they just kind of settled with that reality. Bought a lot out of one of those 3,500 lots and built their dream home. And now, I mean, geez, some of these people are 15 years into maybe a 30-year mortgage. They're already halfway done with their mortgage, and they've had their dream house for the last, 10 to 15 years. So it's just a perfect example of, if you're somebody that's maybe waiting and saying, well, we want to time the market, let's just wait for things to get back to normal. You could be waiting for quite some time.
Right. And that's a good, comparison, for those that have, shopped for homes, because there are, properties that are newly built homes, and usually there's a builder or a developer, behind that. And so some of those, houses pop up where by the time, you get to the showing, the driveway is not even poured, right? Or the patio. And so those are great options. Those still exist. But what he's referring to is actually looking at, individual lots that just have no, beginning stages at all to them, and how those have really, decreased quite some time in that time frame as well. So, that's kind of another piece to the pie here. But ultimately, what we want to do is just have, anyone listening that is thinking about buying a home really just understand that your scenario, from getting pre-approved to going to shop for homes, all that really comes down to the sales contract and the offer that you write on the property that you end up wanting to write on. And so from a seller's perspective, you list your house and you're going to have multiple offers to choose from 99% of the time. And so the paperwork that's in front of the sellers is really speaking for you as an individual. There's not like, sellers and buyers don't get, interviewed and they pick them on morale. They pick based on what the sales contract states. And so ultimately, from a real estate perspective and from a lending perspective, our job is to make sure that on paper, you've got the most attractive offer within the grounds of what you're comfortable doing, of course. And so we just want to talk about a few ways that sellers look at offers from Austin's perspective of dealing with clients that are selling their home and then reviewing the offers with them when that time comes. And then also just kind of talking just a little bit about how the mind set or the control kind of switches into, yes, you're wanting to buy a house, but you ultimately have to sell your offer to the seller. And so it's kind of a different mindset of just how the offer comes together and what you do when it comes time to drafting the sales contract.
I really like the way that you put it, Mike, because it actually is a really important thing to sort of grasp, which is that you almost become a seller in yourself when you're writing an offer, because you're presenting a piece of value to the seller. Right. And you want to do everything you can to sort of convince them to take you. Not much different than if you were selling something else. If you were selling a car, hey, here's all the reasons that you should choose this car, and or maybe go with our business instead of choosing a different business.
Right.
I mean, it's really the same mentality, honestly. You're just kind of selling yourself to the seller. I mean, on paper, I guess you could say. So, for those of you that have maybe followed some of my content, I have my own channel too, and Mike has his own business page too, where we put out content. I've put out in the past videos about how to win and how to make your offer strong. And to recap some of that stuff, basically, a lot of people think it comes down to two ways that you can make an offer strong, and these are the two main ways. Look, you can either have a higher purchase price or you can have fewer contingencies. And just to remind people what the contingencies in a typical offer are, they would be the financing contingency, the appraisal contingency, and most importantly, the inspection contingency, right? So usually, if you're just looking at just pieces of paper, it would seem that the best offer would be whatever has the best combination of that. The highest purchase price with the fewer contingencies. We, of course, can deduce that down. It would be a high cash offer, right? But here's the thing, guys. There are ways to actually still make your offer stand out, even if you maybe aren't necessarily able to take advantage fully of those two ways to make your offer strong. I mean, most people that we deal with are probably going to need a financing contingency. Most people take out a loan to buy their house, right?
Right.
Most people are going to want to inspect the house, and then with the financing contingency comes the appraisal contingency. So, what Mike and I try to do to really stand out for our clients and really help everybody is not just focusing on that paper stuff in the contract. There are other ways to stand out. So we were talking about some of this stuff, really digging deeper into what the seller's situation can go a long way, right? So as an example, if you are looking at a house that is still occupied, and something that I would do, for example, is I would call that listing agent if I had a buyer that wanted to write, and I would say, what's the seller's situation? Tell me. And a lot of time they're going to share some information. They're going to say, hey, they're selling this house to buy another one, or maybe they're moving out of state, for example, or hey, there was a job change.
Yep.
There can be a variety of things. And if you understand the seller's situation a little bit, well, maybe now you can structure your offer in a way that would make more sense. For example, maybe adjusting the closing date. If you're somebody that is dealing with a seller that needs more time to move. I mean, hey, geez, if you need a lot of time to move and the seller's looking at these offers and you're the offer that gave them more time, that can really work out in your favor.
Yeah, and that can swing, whether you get the offer accepted or not, obviously. And those are just kind of the, that's a very blanket statement on how to, make your offer stronger at the end of the day. But ultimately, within the sales contract, all those things really do make a difference. But I think one of the coolest examples was when you bought your house. And Austin's Place has a huge, barn on the property.
It's the original Germantown dairy farm.
And that's, I think it's really cool that when you went to go, look at the property, the barn was filled with all sorts of just stuff, right? I mean, there was some machinery, there was just some stuff left over, old furniture, just it was full. And so, you had noticed that the seller was older and, still had some stuff, in the house, and he went out of your way, right, and asked if, it would be okay, if he didn't have to empty the barn, that wouldn't be a concern for you. So if you were to purchase the home and come to closing, that whatever he left on the property that he didn't want to pay to get rid of, or have hauled away, essentially, that you would take care of, and you ended up making out pretty well on that deal. And he said it made a difference.
I won by that.
Yeah.
So the property was built in 1872. So that shed that's back there, I mean, I'm sure, I don't know if it's original to 1872, but it's at least 100 years old. So it had stuff. And seriously, it's kind of funny because I've gone through that barn. I mean, there's some old relics in there. It's actually really interesting to find some history,
but
and I'm
excited
to get into it. But so they had all this stuff. I could tell, and I knew that the seller. I did some research. I can see the tax records. I pulled their names. I could tell that the seller was older, and it was probably going to be a big hassle for them to have to get all that stuff out. A lot of it was junk. That's a lot of trips to the junkyard, hauling trucks, and it's a lot of cost and expense. So in my offer, I literally put right in the offer. I said any pieces or any items that are currently on the property may remain on the property after closing and become property of buyer, myself, at closing. And the phone call that I got after I submitted that offer was, we are so relieved that you were able to recognize that we were having a struggle actually getting this property ready for sale, and that we had all this stuff. And they're like, hands down, we wanted to take that offer because you made it easy for us. Right.
And so, guys, some of the small stuff like that makes a difference. And so, from a lending perspective, I don't necessarily have those conversations on the front line, such as Austin does. But, one big thing is the listing agent on any offer that our buyer is right, always get a phone call from me to just express that, I obviously do a far more high analysis for a pre-approval than most, right? And so giving the listing agent the confidence to tell them that, our borrowers are pre-qualified and we're going to be able to communicate with you throughout the process, and we'll keep your sellers updated on where everything is. That sometimes, can sway an accepted offer, one way or the other. And so some of those finer details we've found just through experience, guys, really make a big difference. So, if you're out there shopping with any agent, do your part, as well to try to, piece some of that stuff together, and maybe just mention it. If your agent has it available to throw in there, it sometimes can make a difference. So that's definitely one that we've seen have some success before.
Yeah, these are just a couple examples of things that Mike and I do as a team to help our buyers really make their offers stand out. I mean, what you've done there, Mike, by calling listing agents when I write offers for our buyers, and then sort of vouching for the buyer, saying, hey, we've been working on their file. These are going to be great clients, really good people to work with. It not only pumps up the buyer, but it also, professionals want to work with people that they know are also professional and are going to make the deal smooth. If you, as a listing agent myself, if I list a property and I get a call from a realtor, and then I get a call from that lender that's working on that deal, and they're reassuring me that, hey, it's going to be a smooth deal. We've really done our due diligence working with these clients. When I look at my seller and I'm presenting that offer, I can look the seller in the eye and say, hey, these guys called, and it sounds like they're going to be a really easy party to work with. And I mean, geez, that can win you the deal right there. So, I mean, that's just one example of something that we do as a team and something that you do to go above and beyond, when we're working on this stuff.
Yeah, and we don't want anyone to, have what we're saying be, scary to you, right? But the reality of what, power or control you have as a buyer at this point is basically zero. You're writing offers and trying to do the best that you can, based on the real estate advice, based on what you can afford and what the financing scenario looks like, to ultimately get a place that's going to work for you and your family, and be able to grow with it and get into something that you like, versus just writing offers on properties because it's just a tight market and that's the way it is. So those things do make a huge difference. And ultimately we've had a lot of success, getting accepted offers and doing so in a timely fashion, with, quick closing dates and with, contingency dates that are competitive, for what the closing date is, and that's ultimately all we can do on the advisory side of things is try to put you in a position to win, and unless your offer is getting accepted, unless we're doing it, in a completely controlled environment, it's kind of a waste of time in some cases.
Yeah, and and one last thing too, guys. I mean, I'll tell you, Mike and I have dozens of little tricks like this. I mean, we really do. I mean, having worked in the business as long as we do and done as many deals as we've done, I mean, we've seen so many different strategies. We've seen what works, what doesn't. One thing that people sometimes forget is, hey, sure, business is business at the end of the day, and there is a lot of fact to, hey, when a seller is looking at paperwork and they're looking at the deals and it's just sort of lined out to them in numbers, a lot of listing agents will sort of just make a spreadsheet of, hey, here's the offers, here's the prices, here's the contingencies, here's the best combination. That does happen a lot of the time, but people are still people, and people care about people. One of the things that we've done many times for our clients too is, when they say, hey, is there anything that we could do to maybe just make us stand out as well? One of the things that I recommend a lot of the time is just writing a heartfelt letter. And when the moment is right too, that especially really, really works. If you are buying somebody's home that they've maybe lived in for a long time, when I look at properties with buyers, I always look at the tax records. We always try to do a little bit of research to find out how long did that person own the property? What's the situation? Is it in a trust? If it's in a trust, a lot of the times that would indicate that it's an estate, for example. Yep. And if we see, for example, that a property is owned maybe by somebody older that's owned that property for 40 or 50 years, we know that their heart is at one with that property, because you really do fall in love with your house.
And we've had sellers at closings that, get emotional handing over the keys and talking about what day garbage pickup is and how the back door sticks. I mean, seriously, we've had many sellers come in and are extremely emotional to sell their home. And so sometimes that letter really does make a difference too. And I think a lot of people do write letters. We've had a lot of borrowers that have brought that up to you, and once again, I don't think that it can hurt, and I think it's one of those things that, depending on the scenario of the seller, can really make you stand out and pull at the heartstrings a little bit.
Just coming from me as a realtor, guys. So I help people buy and sell real estate every day. I'm very involved in this business, of course. I'm one of those individuals that would actually probably help somebody if they were trying to buy my house. So, I very much have put a lot of love and time into my old farmhouse that I own, and I've tried to preserve as much of the history of that property. It's a very unique property, and I love it for that. And it's a property that maybe not everybody would like because it's very old and it's got its quirks. But to me, that's just something that I really loved. So, if I was to sell that house, for example, and somebody were to write me a letter to go along with the offer that said, "Hey, we love the charm of the house. We want to, move in this house and preserve the history of it, and we really we can appreciate the fact that it's an old dairy farm." That would be something that if I was looking at that offer, I'd say, what, my heart is just so attached to this house, and I put so much love into it. I really want it to go to somebody that is going to love and care for it and appreciate it the same way I did. So it's just an example, guys, that those kind of things can go a long way. So to sort of sum it up, and then we'll go on with our Saturday sampler. Like we said at the beginning, hey, in theory, a lot of realtors would say, and a lot of lenders would say the same thing. There's two ways to make your offer: strong purchase price and contingencies. But it goes way deeper than that because we're dealing with people, and people have hearts and have emotions, and there's ways to make your offer stand out, even if you have to have all the contingencies in there. Right?
Yeah, and we've seen it work out both ways, right? Where some people don't write a letter, they don't really have the quickest contingencies, the quickest closing, and we end up, getting it done with that as well. But on certain properties, there is a lot more, traffic, and if there are a lot more offers, some of that stuff can really make you stand out. And we've seen it work, and so we wanted to give you a little bit of just insight on what we're doing on the buy side, to get you to win and get you into a place that you really like. So that's some pretty good stuff.
That's awesome. So appreciate it, Mike. Hey, we're going to move on to our Saturday sampler. Excited about this one. So this one's from the Explorium Brew Pub here, guys. So this is a variant of their Lost in the Sauce series. So the Lost in the Sauce is the Explorium Brew Pub's hazy IPA that they have, and they come out with variants every now and then. So the original Lost in the Sauce, I've had it many times. A very good beer. We actually had some earlier because I had some of that. But this one is a variant with Amarillo hops in it. It's super fresh.
It's a cool can.
I was there for dinner actually last night. Really love the Explorium, by the way, guys. I've been a fan of that place ever since they opened. So it's down at Southridge Mall, which is kind of unique. You don't find a lot of breweries in malls, and they've actually become sort of the anchor of the mall, I guess you could say. That's sort of like
it's a pretty cool place. If you guys haven't been, it's it's a lot of fun. They have really good food.
Food is phenomenal.
They
have a brick pizza oven there, and I'll tell you what, I had a pizza there last night. My God, phenomenal. I mean, really, really awesome. So highly recommend the Explorium. I have not yet had this variant. I'm sure it's going to be great. Let's try it.
Yeah, it's awesome. If you like hazy IPAs, it's awesome. I like hazy IPAs, so.
It's really, really good. It's a really, really good hazy IPA. It's so, when you talk about hazy IPAs, you can have the ones that are maybe have like a lot of like the citrus acidity to it. This one actually, you kind of get a lot of the malt in it. It's kind of got like a thicker mouthfeel.
That's good.
It's not, I wouldn't say it's like as creamy as like some of the other hazy IPAs. It's actually maybe.
Some of them taste like almost like Dreamsicle.
Yeah.
It's kind of got that like orangey-ish, which obviously is a part of it. But
it's got some underlying like West Coast style to it. There's a big difference between the East Coast, New England IPAs, which is what this would be, and the West Coast style, which is more of like a traditional pale ale, like a Sierra Nevada. It's got some... characteristics of that.
The craft beer world is just so in depth that there's millions to choose from. But that one I would give a pass. I like Explorium a lot. I think their beer is really good. It's one that you could have any time of the year too, because some of those are more of just kind of a summer beer to me, but it's pretty good.
Really, really good beer. I would drink that anytime. I always like to rate them on a scale of 0 to 100. 100 being it's the best beer I've ever had in my life. 0, it's the worst. So really, honestly, guys, a high score is anything. Even above 60, geez, would be a good score. I really, really like this beer, and I love the Explorium. So maybe I'll give them a couple extra ticks just because of that. I'm going to go ahead and go with a 79 on it. A 79.
That's 10 points higher than last week. It's a big improvement.
Last week's was a stout that we gave 69 to. So 79, guys, and just because I love the Explorium so much. So big shout out to those guys over there.
Those guys are awesome. It's a really well-oiled machine. When you go to restaurants, bars, different places, even the to-go operations with the coronavirus being what it is, certain places have adapted and been really, really good at it. Others not so much. Explorium's just really well managed. You can tell all the employees there are just very happy to be there, and it's a quick operation. There's no huge wait for food, and that's a great spot. If you guys haven't been there, I would check it out. But that one's really good. Lost in the Sauce, I would give a huge pass, huge thumbs up. And that's where we'll wrap it up for you guys. I hope everyone's weekend is going well. We're a little bit later in the day here. Austin had a ton of showings, and I had a bunch of work we had to get done earlier in the morning. So
we have a comment here, Mike. So we always like to look at the comments before we end the stream, guys, to see if there's any questions. So this one's for you, Mike. Your friend Austin says hello. Thanks so much for tuning in. Hey, and for those of you that tune in, really, we want to try to spread the message as far and wide as we can. So please share our page, share these live streams if you can, and share the Real Talks page. We really want to hopefully get a following and really expand this and continue helping as many people as we can. And Mike and I really would love to continue to sort of just position ourselves as we love real estate. We want to position ourselves as leaders in this industry. And we're going to be around for years to come. So thanks for all the support, everybody.
Yeah, and the free advice and tips. If that's something that you guys, once again, if that brings value, to you, that's our goal. Even if it's you listening for 30 seconds and picking up something, very, very basic or small. That's our goal. So we do appreciate the support. We have had a good number of people, reach out and give us, just topic ideas and different things that they're thinking about in their home buying experience and the way that they, are just kind of navigating the market. And there's some choppy waters for sure. But at the end of the day, our goal is to help people out. And if that's what we're doing, we're in a good place. So hope everyone's weekend's going well. We will talk to you soon.
Absolutely, everybody. Thanks so much again. I'm Austin Cole.
And I'm Mike Flannery.
This has been another episode of Real Talks. Keep it real. Catch you next week.
Have a good one, guys.